Hi everybody, welcome. This meditation tutorial video is meditation instruction for the experience of sadness. So if you're experiencing sadness right now during this time of isolation and uncertainty, I just want to say it's a totally understandable and even appropriate response. I think the subtext of a sad heart is a heart that actually cares very much, which is nothing to be ashamed of, but in fact something to be welcomed and curious about. So, with that being said, I imagine that this meditation would take you anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes to do. Um, you could set your timer for any time in between that range. If you're feeling like the emotion is very, very intense, I just want to invite you to make your session short. Kindness and gentleness with difficult emotions is always the way to go. And if you feel like that gentleness can be accommodated in a longer session, then please, by all means, do that. So, this meditation session would have 4 parts. And the first part has to do with motivation, the second part has to do with feeling, the third part has to do with perceiving, and the last part is about dedication. So, what you would do when you're ready to do this meditation is to once again find yourself in a comfortable position, preferably with your back straight, in a relaxed posture, and just take a few minutes always in meditation. A good idea to settle into your seat. Just feel yourself leaning against your chair or cushion. Feel your knees or feet on the floor, and take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And once you've been settled, the first step is to check in with your motivation. Why are you meditating on sadness? So this is really important because oftentimes I find with difficult experiences, I'm very tempted to meditate as an antidote, as a means to get rid of the unpleasant experience. And many of us experience sadness as something quite unpleasant. We think that there's something wrong with us. It makes us worry or ruminate. It might be physically uncomfortable too. And so it's really natural and understandable that we would have some experiences of aversion to it. But if you think about maybe a friend of yours who, when you were experiencing sadness and they really helped you, what they were like, it might help to develop the proper motivation. So I know that when I've been really held by my partner or friends of mine, that they don't try to get rid of my sadness, and that actually they don't try to push me out the door at all, but they're curious and they ask me questions and they listen and they give me what feels like a great deal of space. And so, similarly, our motivation for working with sadness, we're called to sort of galvanize a mind and a heart that is willing to accommodate and curious to see what the experience of sadness is actually like. And if you're having difficulty mustering up that motivation, one thing that inevitably helps, I think, is to think about who this might benefit in the future. So maybe you could say to yourself, I'm going to spend time meditating on sadness and holding my own sadness and experiencing it and being curious about it so I can be kind to the next person who wants to share their sadness with me. That's a wonderful motivation to call to mind at the first part of your meditation. So once you've settled yourself and called to mind that motivation, that altruistic motivation or a motivation of curiosity and kindness, the next part of the meditation is simply to drop your thoughts for a second and feel into the body. So, when we think about what is any emotion, including sadness, I often think of them as energy that resonates in the body. We often have thoughts about the experience and what it means, kind of commentary on the physicality of the emotion. But here, the invitation in the second part of the meditation on feeling is to just simply let go of those thoughts in an instant and bring the awareness into the body. And see if you can find where you are experiencing the sadness. It might be in your throat, tightness in the throat, tightness in the chest. A lot of people feel sadness in their gut. Some people feel a lightheadedness that comes with it, or a weightiness all over the body. But however you physically experience sadness, in this second part of the meditation, you will simply feel that experience. So inevitably the mind will do what it does, and it will sweetly try to take you away from that experience, or even tell you what that experience means, or even try to describe it. It'll give labels to it. Wow, this is heavy, this is bright, this is difficult, this is bad news. Every time that happens, simply nod to your thinking internally, so to speak, and return to the feeling of sadness. And you'll want to analyze it and, take mental notes of what it's like, which is all a wonderful impulse. But in this first part, you go back to the feeling, back to what is below thought, simply letting the feeling be a feeling. And it might move or shift, and that's okay. But try to bring your attention back again and again to the feeling of sadness. And just a note on how we hold our awareness on a feeling. It's okay that the experience of feeling sadness flows in and out of our awareness, that we don't have to grasp it or be tight with it. We might lose it from time to time and it might come back. It might dissipate altogether, which sometimes happens when you meditate on an emotion. And if that happens for you, you can just pick any other sensation in your body and simply return to it again and again. Also, another point, if you're ever distracted, you can begin at step 1 and refresh your motivation and again come back to feelings. So, having settled yourself, checked in with your motivation, aligned your motivation to what might really be beneficial, laid your attention on the feeling of sadness itself, returning your attention to that actual somatic bodily feeling again and again. In the third part of the meditation, you'll switch to perceiving. So in this portion of the meditation, thoughts are actually going to be used and they're going to be okay. So what that might look like is that you're going to ask questions about the sadness. So you might ask questions like, is it inside or outside of my body? Is the sadness a specific color? Is it in my mind or in my body? You might ask, is it moving? Is it moving quickly? Is it moving slowly? Does it exist? Does it not exist? Any kind of questions you can let your mind, you can let thoughts come and then investigate. Investigate the sadness with these thoughts. Any kind of thoughts, questions about the characteristics, the traits of the sadness itself. And, it's difficult to use thoughts in a meditation, especially when we're beginning, because we often get distracted at what those responses are. We think about our responses instead of checking back in with the reality of our experience. But if you get distracted, simply come back to the body for a minute and then bring up a new inquiry. What color is my sadness? Where is it located? Is it moving? Is it not moving? And every time, rather than trying to answer with another thought, in other words, instead of trying to think about a response, you inquire the response by laying your awareness on the experience of sadness itself. So after you've aligned your motivation, done some feeling meditation, and then perceived using question and examining experience again and again, you're done with your meditation, and you can simply just rest for a moment. And after you've taken maybe a couple breaths, deep breaths in and out, the invitation is to dedicate any benefit from your practice to someone in particular, to some cause, to the entire world, whatever you'd like. But what's very important is that we understand that the spirit of gentleness and kindness is a through line during the entire meditation session. That we begin with the proper motivation, we engage sadness with kindness and curiosity, both in feeling it and perceiving it, and then we let go of our session again with that same kindness and motivation to benefit ourselves and others. So once you've done all 4 steps, you're done with your meditation on sadness. And again, what you would have just done if you did that is a little bit of shamatha and vipassana. So just a quick summary, shamatha meditation is when you return to an object again and again. So you pick something that is the focus of your meditation, and when you get distracted, you simply come back to that experience or object or sound, whatever it happens to be. So in this first part of the meditation, we focused on the feeling of sadness, and we really gave ourselves permission to feel it fully, how we feel feelings below the level of thought. And we inevitably got distracted by our thoughts and would bring our attention back on the feeling of sadness. In the next part of the meditation, we did perceiving, which we used thoughts, we used questions in our minds to inquire about the nature. What is the nature of sadness? Is it a thing that's in a particular location of our body? Or is it a fleeting sensation? If it's fleeting, does it exist or not exist? That's Vipassana meditation. And I refer you back to my introductory video where I had a little bit longer discussion on the differences between shamatha and Vipassana. But in this meditation, we kind of had an even dose of both. And lastly, we did a dedication, which is very important to set us up for altruistic motivation when we return again to the cushion. So I hope this was beneficial, and if it's any consolation, I recall when I first started meditating, I was raptured by grief of loss of a loved one, and I could scarcely meditate for 2 minutes. And my sadness was so all-pervasive, I could not help but look at it. And it was a very watery and heavy and moving experience that I found was difficult to accommodate at times and really be with. But for what it's worth, my experience has been that repeated intimacy, repeated experiential intimacy with sadness, really knowing its ins and its outs, how it appears, has helped me be totally unsurprised by it when it comes back, and very responsive as opposed to reactive, maybe slowing down my day or making myself an extra mug of tea, or otherwise being kinder and gentler to myself given the very understandable circumstances of sadness. And I always tip my hat to sadness itself, because it's taught me very much about not just the nature of emotions, but the nature of phenomena generally, which is such a gift. So thank you so much. If you endured this entire video, I hope it's of benefit. I hope with aligning you to your motivation, feeling, perceiving, and dedicating your practice, you might develop a new relationship to sadness that is beneficial to you and all those you love. So have a great day. See you soon.